first day she arrived at the Navy SEAL training base, there was a mix of excitement and fear in her heart. She had worked her entire life for this moment. Years of physical training, endless early mornings, and late nights filled with studying tactics and survival skills had led her here. Yet, nothing could fully prepare her for the intensity of what awaited. As she stepped onto the compound, the harsh sunlight reflected off the metallic surfaces, and the smell of sweat, metal, and determination filled the air. This place was unlike anything she had experienced before. It was a world where only the strongest, the most disciplined, and the most focused survived. She noticed the other recruits immediately. They were big, muscular, confident young men who had spent years preparing for this. Some of them already carried themselves with an air of superiority, smirking and whispering as new faces arrived. And then there was her, a woman in a sea of men, smaller in stature but carrying herself with a quiet determination. At first glance, many of the recruits thought she might not belong. Some even snickered, whispering jokes about her rank and questioning whether she could handle the demands of SEAL training. It was a cruel but common reality. In an environment built on toughness and endurance, anyone who appeared different could easily become a target for mockery. Her heart raced, but she didn't let it show. She knew the eyes on her were filled with doubt, and that was okay. Doubt could be a tool. She didn't need to speak loudly or boast about her past achievements. What mattered was her performance, and she was ready to prove herself without a single word. As she walked through the base, she noticed the rigorous nature of everything around her. The noise of drills, the shouting instructors, and the precision required in every movement. This was not a place for casual effort. Here, every action had a consequence. The instructors were intense, their eyes scanning every recruit for weakness. They had no tolerance for mistakes or hesitation. Every movement was scrutinized, every expression analyzed. She understood that being underestimated could work in her favor if she played her cards right. So, she focused on observing and learning, taking mental notes on how the group operated, where weaknesses appeared, and what the instructors seemed to value most. She didn't rush to prove herself immediately. Instead, she absorbed everything around her, quietly preparing for the moment she could act. During the initial introductions, a few recruits laughed openly at her rank, making jokes that were meant to be harmless but carried an edge of condescension. They teased her, questioning whether someone of her size and experience could survive the harsh training ahead. She felt a pang of irritation but didn't respond. Reacting with anger would only give them power. Instead, she allowed herself a quiet smile, confident that her actions would speak louder than their words. Her mind went over the physical challenges she had already mastered and the mental toughness she had cultivated over years of preparation. She reminded herself that every joke, every sneer, was just another obstacle to overcome. As the day progressed, she faced her first real challenge. A basic physical assessment designed to test endurance, strength, and mental focus. The other recruits moved confidently, some struggling but pretending to be strong, while others tried to show off in front of the instructors. She, on the other hand, concentrated on every detail. Each step, each push-up, each run was performed with precision and control. She wasn't the fastest or the strongest in the group yet, but she was steady, disciplined, and methodical. And those qualities would matter more in the long run than flash or ego. By the end of the day, the other recruits had begun to notice her. They had expected someone they could dismiss easily, someone who would falter under pressure. Instead, they saw a young woman who moved with focus and determination, who didn't need to shout to be noticed, and who carried herself with quiet confidence. Some of the mocking glances began to fade, replaced with curiosity and even a hint of respect. But not everyone had realized it yet, and the real test was still to come. As night fell, she reflected on her first day. The SEAL base was intimidating, the people tough, and the environment merciless, but she felt a sense of belonging she hadn't expected. She wasn't here to impress anyone with words or appearances. She was here to prove herself through action, to rise above the mockery, and to show that her rank, her identity, and her skills were far more than what others assumed. This was only the beginning, but she already knew one important truth. Underestimating her would be the first mistake of many who doubted her. The next few days at the SEAL training base proved to be even tougher than her first day. She quickly realized that surviving here wasn't just about physical strength. It was about mental toughness, endurance, and the ability to remain calm under constant pressure. From sunrise to sunset, the recruits were pushed to their limits. The drills were relentless, designed to break their bodies and test their minds. Every day brought new challenges, from grueling obstacle courses and long runs to swimming exercises in icy waters. Her peers, especially those who had already judged her, continued to mock her rank. They whispered behind her back, made jokes when instructors weren't looking, and tried to distract her during exercises. Some openly questioned whether she could even keep up. Their laughter and taunts were meant to intimidate, to shake her confidence. But she had learned long ago that mockery often came from fear or insecurity. Instead of reacting, she stayed focused, channeling their doubt into motivation. Every snicker, every rolling eye, fueled her determination to prove herself. Not to them, but to herself. During one particularly difficult obstacle course, the differences in skill and endurance became clear. The course included climbing ropes, scaling walls, crawling through mud, and balancing on narrow beams. Many of the recruits rushed forward recklessly, trying to finish quickly, but they made mistakes that slowed them down. She, on the other hand, moved deliberately and efficiently. Her body was in peak condition from years of training, but more importantly, her mind was disciplined. She studied each obstacle before acting, calculated her movements, and maintained a rhythm that kept her strong even as exhaustion set in. Some of the recruits were surprised. They had assumed she would falter, but she continued to complete each task with precision. Even when she struggled, she never let it show. She learned to mask fatigue, to breathe steadily, and to keep her mind sharp. Her peers began to notice that while they were huffing and stumbling, she remained composed, almost calm in the chaos. A few whispered in disbelief, "How is she keeping up?" Or, "She's still going strong." Yet the majority still laughed or ignored her, convinced they were stronger simply because they were bigger or louder. Mental exercises were just as challenging as physical ones. Instructors tested their problem-solving skills, ability to navigate maps, and handle simulated combat situations. While others panicked or made careless mistakes, she approached every challenge methodically. She asked the right questions, thought ahead, and stayed calm even when the task seemed impossible. Her ability to combine mental strategy with physical skill began to set her apart, though few recognized it at first. To her, it wasn't about standing out, it was about surviving and excelling where others failed. One day, during a team exercise, the instructors paired recruits together to complete a mission simulation. Her partner was a brash young man who had mocked her since day one. He doubted her ability and openly expressed it. She could have responded with anger or frustration, but instead, she focused on the task. The simulation involved navigating a rough terrain while carrying heavy equipment and coordinating under stress. While her partner struggled, she guided him subtly, making adjustments without taking credit. By the end of the exercise, their team completed the mission efficiently, though her role was largely invisible to others. This pattern continued every day. She worked hard, endured every challenge, and quietly proved her skills. The mockery didn't stop entirely, but cracks began to appear in the confidence of those who had doubted her. Some recruits began to watch her more closely, curious about her abilities. The instructors, too, took note. They saw someone who was disciplined, resilient, and strategic, someone who could handle extreme pressure without losing focus. Even during rest periods, she observed carefully. While others joked or bragged, she studied her peers and the environment. She learned who was strong under pressure, who panicked easily, and who could be trusted in critical situations. She was preparing herself not only for the challenges of training but also for the moment when she would be recognized for her true abilities. Her strategy was simple. Stay focused, ignore the mockery, and let her actions speak louder than words. By the end of the week, it became clear that she was not an ordinary recruit. While her peers continued to underestimate her, she had quietly outperformed many in endurance, skill, and mental focus. The gap between what others assumed and the reality of her abilities was growing. Some began to realize that the jokes they had made were premature, though they didn't yet fully understand the depth of her skill. Through it all, she never bragged, never showed anger, and never tried to force respect. Her confidence was quiet, rooted in preparation and discipline. The mockery that had greeted her on her first day became less important as she focused on what truly mattered, proving herself through consistent, determined action. She had learned an important lesson. In the SEALs, as in life, words could not define someone's worth. Only actions could. By the end of part 2, she had firmly established herself as someone not to be dismissed. Though most of her peers still underestimated her, a few curious glances and whispered comments showed that the tide was slowly turning. The real test, the moment when she would finally command respect, was still ahead. But even now, it was becoming clear that her journey was not about being noticed immediately. It was about being unstoppable when the moment truly mattered. The next challenge she faced was unlike anything she had experienced before. It was a test designed not just to measure physical strength, but mental toughness, endurance, and the ability to perform under extreme pressure. The instructors had called it the ultimate obstacle simulation, a grueling exercise that combined running, climbing, swimming, and problem-solving all in one. Everyone knew that many recruits would fail, and those who did often left the training broken in spirit as well as body. As the exercise began, she felt the familiar rush of adrenaline. Her peers, who had continued to mock her rank and underestimate her abilities, started the course with loud confidence, joking and trying to show off their strength. Some ran too fast, pushing themselves recklessly, only to stumble over obstacles or tire before the end. Others argued with each other about strategy, wasting precious energy on distractions. She, however, focused entirely on the task ahead. She didn't rush or show off. She studied the course, assessed each obstacle, and planned her moves carefully. The first obstacle was a high wall with a rope dangling from the top. Many of the male recruits assumed they could climb it with brute strength alone, but a few fell, their hands slipping on the rope or their legs giving out. She approached it methodically, wrapping her hands around the rope, positioning her legs carefully, and using steady, controlled movements to pull herself up. Her technique was precise, her timing perfect, and she reached the top while maintaining her energy. As she landed on the other side, she glanced back to see several of her peers still struggling, some muttering under their breath in frustration. Next came the mud crawl, a long trench filled with thick, sticky mud. Many recruits had to pause multiple times to pull themselves forward, their clothes and bodies weighed down by the muck. She entered the mud with determination. Each movement was deliberate, conserving energy while maintaining speed. She pushed through with her elbows and knees, sliding, crawling, and keeping her head down. By the time she reached the end, she was covered in mud, but she had moved faster and more efficiently than most of the men in her group. A few began to look at her differently, though some still whispered jokes, unsure of how to reconcile what they had seen. The simulation didn't stop there. Next came a swimming portion through icy water, with strong currents and obstacles to navigate underwater. Many recruits panicked, struggling against the cold and the weight of their gear. She dove in with focus, controlling her breathing, staying calm, and moving steadily. She watched the currents, timed her strokes, and kept her body efficient. Others splashed, gasped, and slowed down, but she pressed on, emerging from the water with energy still in reserve. The instructors noticed her calmness under pressure, a trait that would be essential in real missions. After the water, the final portion was a complicated navigation and problem-solving challenge. Each team had to reach checkpoints, solve codes, and signal for extraction, all while exhausted from the previous obstacles. She worked carefully, analyzing the terrain, directing her teammates quietly, and ensuring they didn't make mistakes. Her peers, who had doubted her from the start, began to rely on her guidance, though they didn't fully admit it. The irony was not lost on her. Those who had mocked her rank were now following her lead without even realizing it. By the end of the simulation, she had finished among the top performers in both speed and accuracy. Some of her peers were shocked. They had expected her to falter, to slow down, or to rely on others to carry her through. Instead, she had demonstrated a combination of endurance, strategy, and composure that many of them lacked. Even the instructors exchanged glances, impressed by her quiet strength. They saw someone who not only survived the simulation but excelled, someone who could be trusted in real high-pressure situations. What was most remarkable was how she handled the attention afterward. She didn't brag or boast. She didn't need to. Her performance spoke for itself. The murmurs and whispered admiration of her peers were proof enough that she had begun to change how people viewed her. A few who had mocked her outright were now hesitant, unsure whether to continue their teasing. It was clear that underestimating her had been a mistake. This part of training also taught her another lesson. Patience and observation could be as powerful as strength and skill. While many recruits focused on impressing instructors or beating others, she concentrated on staying calm, making smart choices, and maintaining her energy. By the time she crossed the finish line, she had not only completed the challenge but had done so in a way that set her apart from nearly everyone else. Even as the day ended and the recruits recovered, she reflected on what had happened. The mockery, the doubt, the jokes. None of it mattered. What mattered was proving herself through consistent action, through skill and determination. She realized that her journey was just beginning. There would be harder tests, more people underestimating her, and higher stakes ahead. But this simulation had shown her one important truth. Her abilities were real, her focus unshakable, and she was capable of far more than anyone, including herself, might have imagined. By the time night fell, the other recruits had a new perspective. Some whispered, some stared in disbelief, but all had seen something they couldn't ignore. She had quietly made her mark. The next part of her journey would bring even greater challenges. But for the first time, the balance of respect and doubt had begun to shift. She wasn't just surviving SEAL training. She was beginning to define it on her own terms. As the days passed at the SEAL training base, it became clear that the challenges were only getting harder. The instructors pushed the recruits beyond what most people would consider humanly possible, testing not only strength and endurance but patience, teamwork, and mental resilience. She quickly realized that surviving here wasn't about being the loudest or the fastest. It was about consistency, focus, and the ability to stay calm when everything around you was chaos. Her peers continued to underestimate her. Some still whispered jokes about her rank, assuming she was inexperienced or unable to keep up with the demands of the training. Others rolled their eyes at her quiet confidence, thinking that someone who didn't boast about their skills must not be very good. Yet, she didn't let their opinions affect her. She had learned early on that judgment from others was irrelevant. What mattered was what she could do, not what others thought of her. One morning, the instructors announced a new challenge, a complex team exercise designed to test communication, coordination, and problem-solving under stress. Each group had to navigate through rough terrain, complete multiple objectives, and return within a time limit. While many recruits rushed ahead recklessly, arguing about the best strategy, she stayed calm. She analyzed the terrain, observed the capabilities of each teammate, and quietly suggested a plan that minimized mistakes and maximized efficiency. Her suggestions were subtle at first, enough to guide the team without drawing attention to herself, but they were effective. During the exercise, her leadership became even more apparent. When one teammate panicked during a difficult crossing over a rocky river, she stayed steady, calmly guiding him without losing focus. When another teammate struggled with a navigation task, she offered a clear, concise solution. Despite the ridicule she had endured, she demonstrated a calm authority that others began to notice, even if they were hesitant to admit it. By the end of the exercise, her team had completed the mission faster and more efficiently than most others, though she received little overt recognition. She also continued to excel individually. Every obstacle, every drill, and every physical test showed her growing strength and skill. She had developed a rhythm, a way of moving and thinking that allowed her to conserve energy while performing at peak efficiency. While her peers often burned out quickly or made mistakes under pressure, she maintained focus, endurance, and precision. Even when the instructors threw unexpected challenges at the group, she adapted quickly, thinking on her feet and remaining calm. What made her stand out even more was her mental resilience. Some recruits began to crack under the relentless pressure, complaining about exhaustion or frustration. She, however, kept her emotions in check. She had trained herself to embrace the challenge rather than resist it, turning physical and mental fatigue into motivation. She knew that maintaining focus while others faltered would give her an advantage later, even if no one acknowledged it yet. Despite her growing competence, the mockery didn't completely disappear. Some of the recruits still made jokes, whispering sarcastic comments about her rank or questioning how she managed to keep up. But with each passing day, those comments carried less weight. Her actions were speaking louder than any words, and slowly, the perception of her peers began to shift. Some looked at her with quiet curiosity, wondering how someone they had underestimated could keep excelling when they struggled. Others, still prideful, refused to acknowledge it, but even they were forced to take notice. During one particularly grueling drill, the instructors introduced a timed endurance challenge that tested every recruit's physical limits. Many of her peers rushed at it with brute force, expecting speed alone to carry them through. Some failed spectacularly, tiring out or making critical mistakes. She, however, approached it with a careful combination of speed, technique, and endurance. She paced herself, avoided unnecessary strain, and executed each movement with precision. By the end of the drill, she had not only finished but finished among the top performers. Even the instructors gave a subtle nod of approval, recognizing her disciplined approach. Through these experiences, she learned the importance of patience and observation. She realized that in the SEALs, appearing strong or fast was not enough. What mattered was how you handled pressure, how you solved problems, and how you maintained control when chaos surrounded you. By quietly demonstrating these skills, she began to earn a reputation, not through words, but through consistent action. By the end of Part 4, the transformation in her peers' perception was noticeable, though not complete. The mockery had not vanished entirely, but the doubts they had about her abilities had grown. Some of the recruits whispered about her efficiency and calm under pressure. Others, still prideful, avoided acknowledging her skill openly. But there was a new respect in their eyes that hadn't been there before. She had begun to prove that her rank did not define her, her actions did. The most important lesson she carried forward was that respect was earned, not given. She understood that true strength was not just physical, but mental and emotional. By staying focused, disciplined, and patient, she was slowly turning the tide. Those who had mocked her were beginning to see glimpses of the truth. She was capable, resilient, and unstoppable. The journey ahead would be even harder, but she had already proven that underestimating her would be a mistake. The day of the high-pressure mission simulation arrived, and the tension at the SEAL training base was palpable. This was no ordinary exercise. It was designed to test every skill the recruits had learned so far, from endurance and strength to teamwork, strategy, and quick decision-making under stress. The instructors had made it clear this simulation would push them to their absolute limits. Many recruits were nervous, whispering about the difficulty of the task and questioning whether anyone could complete it successfully. Her peers, who had continued to underestimate her, were especially vocal. Some joked openly about her rank, implying she was inexperienced and would struggle under the pressure. A few smirked, confident in their own abilities, certain that this mission would prove her unprepared. She listened quietly, giving nothing away. She had learned that words were meaningless compared to action, and this mission was her chance to demonstrate exactly what she was capable of. The simulation began with a chaotic start. Recruits were dropped into rough terrain, required to navigate through dense forests, shallow rivers, and rocky hills. Each team had specific objectives: locate targets, solve coded messages, and complete tasks under time constraints, all while under the watchful eyes of the instructors. Many recruits rushed ahead recklessly, eager to prove themselves but making costly mistakes. They tripped over obstacles, argued about strategy, or wasted energy trying to impress their peers. She, however, remained calm. She observed her surroundings, assessed the terrain, and planned each move carefully. She didn't rush, She moved with purpose, maintaining both speed and efficiency. Her first major challenge was crossing a fast-moving river carrying heavy gear. Several of her peers panicked, struggling against the current and dropping their equipment. She approached it with careful focus, using precise foot placement and steady strokes to maintain balance. Her movements were calculated, conserving energy while moving efficiently. As she reached the other side, she noticed several recruits still struggling. A quiet sense of satisfaction rose within her, not from superiority, but from knowing her preparation and focus had carried her through where others faltered. Next, the teams faced a series of coded puzzles that had to be solved before moving forward. Many recruits became frustrated, rushing through answers and making mistakes under pressure. She slowed down, analyzed the codes methodically, and solved each problem one by one. Her calmness was contagious. Her teammates began to look to her for guidance, realizing that her quiet leadership could help them succeed. It was subtle, almost invisible, but her strategic thinking began to influence the entire group. As the mission progressed, obstacles grew more complex and dangerous. They had to climb steep hills, crawl through narrow tunnels, and navigate a maze of barriers while maintaining stealth. Some of the recruits began to falter under the pressure. Exhaustion, fear, and panic caused mistakes that cost them precious time. She, however, adapted to every challenge, drawing on her training, discipline, and mental resilience. She remained focused on the task, moving with precision and efficiency, even as chaos surrounded her. What truly set her apart during this simulation was her ability to combine mental acuity with physical skill. While others relied on brute force or rushed recklessly, she thought through each action. She anticipated problems, adjusted her strategy on the fly, and maintained composure even when unexpected obstacles arose. Her peers, who had mocked her rank, now began to watch in silence, some in disbelief, as she quietly led them through challenges they thought impossible. By the final stage of the mission, it was clear that she was not just keeping up, she was excelling. The instructors had designed the simulation to test leadership under extreme pressure, and she had become the anchor of her team. Her ability to guide others, make quick decisions, and remain composed in the face of exhaustion and stress had turned a chaotic exercise into a coordinated, successful operation. The irony was unmistakable. Those who had doubted her the most had now come to rely on her insight and skill without even realizing it. When the simulation concluded, the instructors evaluated the results. Her team had completed the mission faster, more efficiently, and with fewer mistakes than most others. Even the other recruits who had been vocal in their mockery were forced to acknowledge her skill, though some still did so silently, unwilling to admit it openly. The instructors, however, recognized her performance as exceptional. They noted her ability to remain calm under pressure, lead without dominating, and execute complex tasks with precision, qualities that distinguished her from the rest of the group. She didn't celebrate or draw attention to herself. She knew the mission was only a simulation, and the real challenges of being a SEAL would be even greater. But this exercise had proven an important truth. Her rank or appearance didn't define her abilities. Her focus, preparation, and determination did. The respect of her peers, though still tentative, had begun to shift. Even those who had mocked her could no longer deny that she was someone extraordinary. By the end of the day, she reflected quietly on what had happened. The mockery, doubt, and whispered jokes were no longer as important. What mattered was the proof she had given through action. The high-pressure simulation had revealed not only her skill but her potential to handle real-world missions, the kind that demanded not just physical strength but intelligence, strategy, and calm under fire. She realized that her journey was far from over, but with every challenge, she was growing stronger, smarter, and more prepared for what lay ahead. The mission had been a turning point. Her peers had begun to see her differently, even if only slightly, and the instructors had taken note of her abilities. She understood that respect would not come from words but from continued performance, from quiet consistency, and from demonstrating the qualities of a true Navy SEAL. This simulation had been more than a test of skill. It had been a test of character, and she had passed with distinction. The atmosphere at the SEAL training base changed the day the commander arrived. Word had spread quickly. A high-ranking officer was coming to observe the recruits during their exercises. For most of the men, it was an opportunity to impress, to show off strength and skill, and perhaps gain recognition from someone in charge. For her, it was a moment she had been quietly preparing for, though she knew it would not be easy. The commander's presence meant the challenges would be harder, the scrutiny sharper, and the need for focus absolute. When the commander arrived, the recruits lined up, trying to appear confident. The men whispered jokes about her, just as they had since her arrival. Some laughed quietly, mocking her rank and assuming that she would struggle under the commander's watchful eye. It was as if nothing she had done in the previous days mattered. She ignored the whispers, focusing instead on observing the commander and the exercises that were about to begin. She could sense that this was not just another training day. It was a test that would reveal who could truly handle pressure, think strategically, and lead under extreme conditions. The instructors immediately put the recruits through a rigorous exercise, combining physical endurance, navigation, and tactical decision-making. Most of the men moved quickly, eager to finish first and make an impression. They barked orders at each other, trying to control the chaos, but often acted without thought. She, however, approached the challenge in her usual way, calm, observant, and deliberate. She studied the terrain, assessed her teammates' strengths and weaknesses, and formulated a plan that allowed her group to move efficiently while minimizing mistakes. Her methodical approach began to stand out. As the exercise progressed, her peers continued to underestimate her. Some made snide remarks, hinting that her quiet demeanor meant she wasn't capable of handling the commander's scrutiny. But their comments were drowned out by her performance. When the group encountered a particularly difficult obstacle, a steep, muddy slope leading to a water crossing, many recruits panicked. They shouted instructions over each other, slipped, and wasted energy. She remained calm, guiding her teammates with subtle cues, demonstrating techniques that allowed them to traverse the obstacle safely and quickly. The commander noticed immediately. His eyes followed her movements with interest, noting her steady pace, precision, and ability to maintain composure under pressure. Unlike others who acted impulsively or arrogantly, she displayed quiet authority without drawing unnecessary attention to herself. The other recruits were too caught up in trying to impress to notice the significance of her approach. But the commander did. He recognized someone who not only survived extreme challenges but did so with intelligence, discipline, and strategic foresight. During the tactical navigation portion of the exercise, her skills shone even brighter. The group was required to reach several checkpoints in a specific sequence, solve codes, and communicate effectively while under time constraints. While most recruits stumbled, arguing over the order of tasks or panicking when mistakes were made, she remained calm and focused. She analyzed the problem, suggested adjustments subtly, and guided the team forward. By the end, her group completed the objectives efficiently, with fewer mistakes than most others. It was clear to the commander that she was operating on a level above the rest. Even as her peers continued their subtle mockery, some beginning to feel frustrated that she had quietly outperformed them, the commander stepped forward. He asked her rank casually at first, expecting the usual answer. When she responded, a faint smile appeared on his face. He knew there was more to her than anyone realized. It wasn't just her training or skill. It was the way she handled herself under extreme scrutiny, the precision of her actions, and the discipline that went beyond standard expectations. The other recruits were still uncertain, some confused by the commander's interest. The commander then began to ask questions that hinted at her identity. He noted her tactical knowledge, her calm leadership, and her exceptional ability to adapt under pressure. With each observation, the whispers of doubt among the other recruits grew louder. They had mocked her without understanding who she really was. They didn't see the years of preparation, the discipline, or the secretive assignments that had honed her skills. The commander's keen attention signaled to them, though subtly, that she was not just another recruit. She was someone with a level of experience and responsibility far beyond their comprehension. By the end of the day, the effect on the group was undeniable. Some recruits looked at her with newfound curiosity and respect, though they were hesitant to admit it openly. Others remained skeptical, clinging to their preconceived notions, but even they were forced to acknowledge her competence. The commander's presence had amplified the contrast between her quiet, disciplined excellence and the rest of the group's chaotic attempts to impress. She had not needed to prove anything through words or arrogance. Her actions had spoken louder than anything else. As she rested later that evening, she reflected on the day. The arrival of the commander had been intimidating, but it had also shown her how observation and patience could shift perceptions. She realized that while many would judge by appearances, the truth of her abilities would always reveal itself through consistent performance. Her peers' mockery had less power now, replaced by growing, albeit reluctant, recognition. She understood that the true challenge wasn't just completing exercises. It was demonstrating reliability, composure, and leadership in a way that demanded respect, even if quietly. By the end of Part 6, the stage was set. The commander had noticed her skills, her calmness under pressure, and her subtle leadership. While her peers still underestimated her, the foundation had been laid for the coming revelation. One that would shock everyone and cement the truth about her extraordinary abilities. The day of the revelation arrived, and the tension at the SEAL training base was thick. The recruits had completed another grueling set of exercises under the watchful eyes of their instructors and the commander. Many were exhausted, but there was an unusual energy in the air, a sense that something extraordinary was about to happen. The men who had mocked her since her arrival whispered among themselves, still unsure why the commander paid her such close attention. They assumed it was because of her quiet demeanor, or perhaps the commander was simply observing her more closely than the others. Little did they know, the truth was far more astonishing. The commander gathered the recruits for a final briefing. His eyes swept across the group, pausing briefly on her. He began speaking, praising the efforts of everyone during the exercise. Then he shifted his tone. There was a gravity in his voice that drew everyone's attention. "There's something important you all need to know about one of your team members," he said. The men exchanged confused glances. Some of the louder, more boastful recruits smirked, expecting yet another motivational speech. But they would soon discover that this was far from ordinary. He looked directly at her and said, "Her rank and role aren't what you think. Her identity is classified. She is part of a specialized unit with responsibilities beyond what most of you could imagine." A stunned silence fell over the group. Whispers began to spread as recruits struggled to process what they had just heard. Some looked at her incredulously, others froze in shock, and a few even took a step back as if seeing her for the first time. The ones who had mocked her the most were completely speechless. For years, she had trained quietly, performed with precision, and endured mockery without complaint. Now, all of it came together in a moment that would redefine how everyone saw her. The commander continued, explaining that she had been involved in classified operations that required both exceptional skill and extreme discretion. Her calm under pressure, her strategic thinking, and her leadership in challenging situations were not accidents. They were the result of rigorous training and real-world experience that most recruits could not even imagine. Her peers began to reflect on every interaction, every exercise, every moment of mockery they had indulged in. They realized that the quiet confidence she displayed, which they had dismissed as arrogance or luck, was in fact the hallmark of someone trained at the highest level. The obstacles that had seemed easy to some were navigated with precision and strategy by her, and the missions she had led during the simulations now took on a new significance. The laughter that had followed her every step seemed foolish in retrospect. The commander's revelation was not just about her skills. It was also about her integrity. He emphasized that she had never flaunted her identity, had never used it to gain advantage, and had quietly allowed others to doubt her while proving herself through action. The recruits began to understand the discipline required to carry such a secret, the mental fortitude necessary to excel while being underestimated, and the courage it took to remain composed under constant scrutiny. One by one, the recruits who had mocked her started to process the truth. Some looked at her with genuine respect, while others struggled with a mix of embarrassment and admiration. They realized that judging someone by appearances or by rank alone could be a dangerous mistake. She had been underestimated not because of lack of ability, but because others failed to see beyond superficial impressions. And now, the reality of her skill, training, and identity was impossible to ignore. She stood quietly, as she always had, allowing the revelation to speak for itself. There was no gloating, no arrogance, just a calm confidence that had always defined her. The contrast between her composed demeanor and the shocked expressions of her peers was striking. The same men who had whispered jokes and dismissed her were now silent, witnessing firsthand the truth behind her skill and discipline. The commander's announcement had transformed the way they viewed her completely. The lesson for everyone present was clear. Appearances can be deceiving. Respect is earned through action, not assumed through rank or physical presence. She had demonstrated that through every drill, every obstacle, and every mission simulation. The fact that her identity had remained classified only reinforced the depth of her experience and the seriousness of her capabilities. She had quietly earned the respect that words could never command. By the end of the day, the shift in the base was palpable. The recruits who had doubted her now treated her differently. Some sought her guidance on exercises, while others simply observed her actions with newfound respect. The commander's revelation had not only highlighted her extraordinary abilities but also sent a powerful message to everyone present. Underestimate her at your own peril. As the sun set, she reflected on the day with quiet satisfaction. She had never sought recognition or validation, but the acknowledgement of her skill and identity by both her commander and peers was a powerful reminder that patience, discipline, and consistent performance would always speak louder than words or mockery. The journey ahead remained challenging, but she had proven one undeniable truth. Her ability, resilience, and composure were beyond question, and the world around her would have to catch up to that reality. The days following the commander's revelation were different at the SEAL training base. The atmosphere that had once been filled with laughter, mockery, and doubt had transformed into one of quiet respect and cautious admiration. The recruits who had once whispered jokes about her rank now observed her every move with a new awareness. They realized that the woman they had underestimated was not only capable but extraordinary. Her calm composure, precise actions, and unwavering focus had earned the recognition that no words could achieve. Even those who had been the loudest in mocking her began to approach her differently. Some asked for advice on difficult exercises, while others simply watched her to learn techniques they had previously dismissed. She welcomed none of it with arrogance. Her demeanor remained quiet, composed, and professional. She did not gloat or seek validation, because she understood a lesson that many of her peers were still learning. True skill and leadership are shown through action, not words or titles. The commander, who had first revealed her classified status, continued to observe her progress. He occasionally offered subtle guidance or challenging tasks, testing her further. While others were intimidated by the presence of such a high-ranking officer, she remained calm, confident that her training and preparation would carry her through. Every challenge, no matter how difficult, was approached with a strategic mind and disciplined body. Her peers began to notice that her calmness was not passive. It was a strength, one that allowed her to make quick, smart decisions in high-pressure situations. During physical training, she continued to outperform many of her colleagues. Obstacles that once seemed insurmountable for others were handled with efficiency and skill. Her quiet determination was contagious. Teammates who had struggled before found themselves inspired by her example. Slowly but surely, she became the standard against which others measured themselves. Her leadership was not about commanding or yelling orders. It was about demonstrating what was possible through discipline, focus, and preparation. But it wasn't just her physical ability that drew respect. Her mental resilience was equally impressive. She handled mistakes, setbacks, and unexpected challenges with grace and intelligence. When equipment failed or objectives seemed impossible, she adapted immediately, finding solutions that kept the mission or exercise moving forward. The same recruits who had mocked her now sought her guidance during problem-solving exercises, realizing that her quiet insights often led to the best outcomes. They had begun to understand what the commander had seen all along. She was extraordinary in ways that went far beyond what was visible on the surface. The culmination of her journey at the training base was a high-stakes, multi-phase mission designed to test endurance, strategy, and teamwork. Her peers had prepared themselves mentally for the challenge, but they had also internalized the knowledge that she would lead by example. As the mission unfolded, she took calculated actions, guiding her team subtly while still allowing each member to perform. She anticipated obstacles, managed risks, and kept morale high even in moments of extreme fatigue. The others began to understand that following her example, rather than questioning it, would be the key to success. By the end of the mission, it was clear that she had not only succeeded but had done so in a way that elevated everyone around her. Her team had completed objectives faster and more efficiently than most others, with minimal errors. The instructors noted her leadership, strategic thinking, and ability to maintain composure under stress. Even those who had doubted her initially could no longer ignore the truth. She was a force to be reckoned with, someone who embodied the qualities of a true Navy SEAL in every sense of the word. In the final debrief, the commander addressed the recruits. He praised the efforts of everyone but singled her out in a way that commanded attention. He spoke of her skill, her composure, and her quiet leadership. He reminded the group that true respect is earned, and that underestimating someone can lead to serious mistakes. The recruits who had mocked her felt the weight of their earlier actions, and many approached her afterward to apologize or express admiration. She accepted their gestures with dignity, showing that her strength extended beyond physical ability to character and humility. By the time the sun set on the training base, a transformation had taken place. She had earned the respect of her peers, the admiration of her instructors, and the acknowledgement of the commander. But most importantly, she had proven to herself that her discipline, preparation, and focus were more powerful than doubt or mockery. She had shown that skill, resilience, and quiet confidence could overcome assumptions, prejudice, and underestimation. In the end, she became more than just a recruit or a member of the SEAL training program. She became an example, a role model, and a reminder that appearances can be deceiving. The journey that began with whispers of doubt and mocking laughter had ended with recognition, respect, and a demonstration of what is possible when preparation meets determination. Her story would linger in the minds of her peers long after the exercises were over, a powerful lesson in perseverance, discipline, and the true meaning of leadership. The final lesson was clear to everyone. Strength isn't always loud, and excellence doesn't always demand attention. Sometimes, it arrives quietly, unnoticed at first, only to reveal itself when it matters most. And when it does, no mockery, doubt, or underestimation can hide the truth of someone's abilities. She had proven that in every challenge she faced, earning her place not just as a SEAL in training, but as a person worthy of respect, trust, and admiration.